And here we are. Let me turn that counter off. Look, we got live an hour early. I mean, a minute early this time. Usually I'm a little bit late, but this time we're a minute early. So today we have John Parker, and he is from the company Film Convert, but today we're going to talk about the brand new plugin just released for Final Cut Pro, and that is called CineMatch, right?
Yep, that's right.
And so I noticed that you are a sponsor. You're doing a session for CineMatch for the Creative Summit next week?
Yep, that's right. It's going to be called Color with Confidence, and it's being presented by Hennessy Griffiths, one of our new team members, who's going to be talking all about basically how to kind of color grade with confidence if you're a non-professional colorist, you're kind of approaching it for the first time, talking about some of the techniques, kind of why you should, why color grading is important for your projects, and kind of best approaches, workflows, techniques, those kind of things.
Oh, I realize it's very important, but I'm not a colorist. I do a little bit. I mean, I can match brightness levels and contrast and saturations and stuff like that. But you get a colorist. I don't know if you know Mark Bach from LA.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a friend of mine. He does coloring, I think 50% of the time, editing the rest of the time. So when I have him on, I'm like, he's talking about things. I don't know what you're talking about. So I spend besides Final Cut, which I've been, using since version 1, but way back in 1999 or whenever it came out. I spend most of my time in Logic. I spend time on the audio side of video. So let's go over some basic things here for Film Convert. So Film Convert is a camera matching plugin. Is that what it is?
So there's Film Convert, the company, and we're probably, if you've been in editing for kind of any number of years, Film Convert's been around for at least since 2012, and we're best known for our film emulation and film
Film
grain
emulation, right?
plugin,
That's what it is. Yeah.
which is also called the latest version, which is called Film Convert Nitrate. And that was again, that's been around for a while now. And it's designed for basically giving your kind of video projects the look of celluloid film, so which people really love and appreciate for just the kind of classic, timeless qualities that it has. And we developed a kind of profiling process where we take individual cameras, we profile them, so we're going to learn about how the sensor and how each kind of individual profile responds to light. And then we create a very accurate transform from that camera footage to the film stock of your choice, whether it's Kodak, Fuji, motion picture stocks, Polaroid, and a few other different choices. And it's basically kind of one-click kind of color grade for your films if you're shooting in, especially if you're shooting in log, and if you are kind of if you're primarily a shooter and an editor and not a colorist, it's a really easy way to get a beautiful kind of grade for your project really quickly.
So are you going to talk about that, or is your company going to talk about that at the Creative Summit? That's one of the products you're going to talk about?
Yeah, that's going to be that's included at the end. So Film Convert is kind of our finishing tool. It's for you want to give your project a nice kind of stylized grade, but you don't have a lot of time. You can't hire a professional colorist.
Right, right.
But Film Convert's kind of a way of giving it both the film color kind of look, so kind of classic film look, and also film grain, which is something that can quite be difficult to achieve. But giving your projects certain kind of films just lend themselves to a kind of film texture, that kind of graininess,
Right.
grittiness,
Right.
depending on what you're doing. And it's also helpful for if you're incorporating kind of stock footage elements or older kind of film footage shot on different kind of formats. Using film grain can kind of tie those all together, give it a really nice unified kind of look. So that's what Film Convert is. But the project or the plugin we're going to be talking most about is our new one called CineMatch, which is the camera matching solution for Final Cut Pro. And we're really excited about this one because it brings new features to Final Cut Pro users that simply just aren't available in kind of the base install of Final Cut Pro. People have been asking for them for a long time. And we're really excited to get this out there. We've put a lot of work into it over the past 4 years. Just released the version of Final Cut Pro last week. You can go download it from the CineMatch website today.
And I think there's a special introductory price right now.
Yep, that's right. It's $139 for the Final Cut Pro plugin. And we also have a bundle if you edit in Final Cut but grade and Resolve. Then we have a bundle license which works across both of those as well.
I'm sure that's very popular with a lot of people. I mean, if I was a colorist, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be editing in Final Cut and grading in Resolve for sure.
Kind of traditionally the tools in Final Cut have been, you've had the color board, you've had kind of curves and wheels there. But the thing that makes CineMatch kind of really sets it apart is that the color tool, the controls that we built into the CineMatch plugin are tailored and designed for your camera. So when you make an exposure adjustment in CineMatch, when you have the right camera, say you've shot on the Panasonic GH5 in selected in CineMatch, and you make an exposure adjustment, it'll correct the exposure of that footage as though you'd done it in camera. It's keeping it the information, the exposure adjustment, right on the color response curve of that camera. So what you're getting is much more natural and kind of intuitive corrections to how your footage and how your camera would kind of respond, rather than just kind of the generic kind of multipliers and emissions and the standard controls.
Exactly. So we're on the CineMatch page right now. So, not being a colorist, I was very interested in this plugin. I loaded it up this morning, and I was very happy that you included iPhones as a camera source and destination, because that's what I shoot on more than anything. I have a
No, it's true, and they're
GH5. Yeah.
becoming.
Yeah.
Mhm. But the iPhones are becoming, just especially the iPhone 12 and the latest iPhone 13 are just taking leaps and bounds in image quality and being able to shoot ProRes. They're becoming fully fledged kind of cinema cameras in and of themselves. So we definitely wanted to add support for those now that they are capable of. We've also partnered with Filmic Pro, the mobile app makers who make the professional cinematography app for the iPhone,
Right.
and they've got a special filmic. They've got a log mode of their own, which you can shoot in, or you can shoot in the Dolby Vision HLG, and we support both of those in the plugin.
Now, do you understand the Dolby Vision HLG and everything? Is that easy? Because I hear that all the time. I understand it's high quality stuff, but I don't quite understand exactly what it is. I don't. Can you explain it very easily to listeners if you do know what it
Uh,
is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically bringing HDR acquisition to the iPhone.
Okay.
So when you're shooting in the Dolby Vision, you're getting a wider color gamut and the broader kind of dynamic range that is suitable for display on an HDR TV. You can take the footage straight off your iPhone and your TV, as long as it's an HDR capable set, will be able to play that back in full HDR.
Right.
For the HDRs, it's amazing when you see it kind of graded and done really well. It really is a transformative viewing experience. And again, the iPhone is kind of several steps ahead. HDR is it's now in kind of higher end cameras, and the grading tools, Premiere, Resolve, and Final Cut, are kind of playing catch up and giving you the ability to kind of edit and view this footage. But for, I think, the most for mainstream kind of users out there, if you're making video, you're still working in SDR at this point. It's probably
Right.
another kind of year to 2 years before the majority of your projects are going to be in HDR. But the fact that the iPhone can kind of do it now is fantastic. So we wanted to make sure we added support for that to be future proofed.
So I was surprised. I got my iPhone 13 Pro Max. I got the 1 terabyte model specifically for ProRes, because I knew that ProRes is going to eat up a lot of storage space. But what I was surprised, the first couple of projects that I did, natively just with H.264 on this phone, when I brought it into Final Cut, it wasn't SDR, it was HLG default,
Yep.
and it made me convert.
Yeah, that's I haven't don't have an iPhone myself, but yeah. So Dolby Vision is encoded with HLG. It's a hybrid log gamma, so it's a type of log like your V-Log or your S-Log on Sony's, C-Log on Canon. So it's not a Rec 7. It's capturing in a wider gamut and capturing with a different type of log curve. So, which typically does need to be, if you ever shot in log, you'll know when you bring it into your editing program, you need to do some kind of correction to it in order to bring it to a viewable space in Rec 709. What the editors are doing now, when you bring those clips in, they'll try and interpret. They'll see that, oh, that's an HLG clip. I know how to kind of transform that to a viewable space, and then so you can export it to a viewable HDR file that you can upload to YouTube or Vimeo.
Right.
But yeah, it's not a seamless or kind of process yet. You still need to tell your editor kind of what type of footage you're working with, how to set up your project, and particularly with CineMatch, where we're doing CineMatch is designed for camera matching, one of its kind of primary use cases. So if you're shooting a project on, say, your GH5, but you want to get some cutaways with your iPhone and match those in, those two cameras just straight out of the box will have very, very different kind of picture styles. The colors will be very different. And CineMatch is designed to help match those up. You'll drop CineMatch on your iPhone footage. You'll say, this is an iPhone shot in Dolby Vision HLG on the iPhone 13. Change that to look like it was shot on the Panasonic GH5 and V-Log. It'll convert that, and then you'll have two clips which are basically look the same, and then you can apply your kind of stylized grade over the top, and that'll give you a seamless kind of look for your film.
Okay. So CineMatch is the first step before you do any
Yep.
Just to get in the ballpark of the cameras matching.
Exactly. Yeah, we're pitching it as it's the ultimate color correction tool because it is native. It works native to your camera controls, so you can make very precise and very accurate kind of corrections. But it also does that transformation to you can transform it to any other kind of picture style that we support, and then that gives you a nice kind of seamless neutral timeline, which is all balanced in exposure and white balance, tint, etc. And
Right.
then if you can either grade clip by clip, or if you have a favorite LUT that you like, you can simply drop that over the top and everything, it'll just work because all your footage is kind of balanced. You've got a neutral foundation for it to stand on.
Now, I'm sure you support B-RAW and ProRes RAW as a matching. Do you match those?
Yeah, absolutely. What it comes down to is the actual picture styles on the camera. So if
Okay.
you're shooting on one of the Blackmagic, there's Gen 4 and Gen 5 film. That's their kind of what they call log. So when you bring your B-roll clip into your editor, you simply say, I want to debayer that as the Gen 4 or Gen 5, and then you just select the corresponding input on CineMatch, and that'll provide the correct transform.
Now, what about ProRes RAW? You have to have a camera that supports ProRes RAW in order to get that.
Yeah, that's right. You can record that on some Atmos and recorders. But yeah, same deal. You simply tell, and in the recorder, you'll set what picture style you want to record that to, and then just set the corresponding input. But it supports it just the same.
So we got a question. Is it ready for M1 chips? Which I think it is, right?
It is. Yep, all the Premiere, Resolve, and Final Cut Pro plugins are all native to the M1s, and you can download those today from the CineMatch website.
So let's talk about the development working with M1s. It's a lot different than working with Intel, or is it just kind of the same thing with a different chapter for developing?
Really, for us, the big change for both Nitrate and CineMatch, what we had to bring in was just adding support for the metal GPU acceleration, and that was actually pre M1.
Right.
So we had to rewrite the entire render pipeline of both Film Convert and CineMatch to support the new kind of metal render modes, and that gave us a huge kind of performance boost even on the Intel Macs. But actually, for the rebuilding for the M1s, that wasn't actually too tricky. It was just kind of choosing a different target and the developing for that. What we did have to do is work quite closely with the Apple FX Plug team because they switched from the FX Plug 2 to the FX Plug 4 framework. So that caused us, we had to change some things, the way we did things in the UI so that we work within that framework. Yeah, the team from Apple were hugely supportive and really helpful, and yeah, we've got it out now.
So it sounds like doing it for Metal 2 was more work than doing it for the M1, Apple Silicon.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it worked out. But the M1, it's working great on the M1 chips today, and the performance increase that you're getting on those, like everybody's been talking about it, but yeah, it's just astonishing what they're getting out of there with the whole system on the chip and the unified memory access.
So I got a 16-inch M1, which is right here, which is what I'm streaming on for right now. The last 2 years I've been streaming on a Mac Pro, an Intel Mac Pro, but I switched over to the M1, and not only did I switch over to the M1, but I switched over from Catalina to Monterey because the M1s, the MacBooks, they ship with Monterey. You cannot do Catalina or Big Sur. I never went to Big Sur. I had a dual boot system. In my Mac Pro, I have a NVMe SSD internal on a PCIe card, so it's very fast. So I put Big Sur on that drive. So it's like native, but it's not messing with my boot drive. And then when Monterey came out, I partitioned, or not partitioned, it's called something else now. Whatever it is now with the SSDs, I put Monterey for a second boot up drive on that drive. So I had Big Sur and Monterey just playing around with it, because when Final Cut Pro 6 came out, I have the iPhone 13, and I wanted to mess around with the cinematic mode, and you can't do that unless you're on Monterey, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's
That's
correct.
yeah. So this is the most fragmented that I've seen Final Cut Pro right now. One feature is only on Monterey. I don't know if there's any features specifically yet that are only on Apple Silicon. And then there's a couple of other, the iPhone itself, this iPhone 13, the frame rates are completely fragmented on this thing. For example, you would think cinematic mode would shoot 24 frames per second, but it does not. It only shoots 30 frames per second. And then there's the other thing is, okay, ProRes. People were saying, well, are you shooting cinematic in ProRes? No, you're not. Cinematic is only H.264 30 frames per second at this point. Now, I'm not saying that can't change, but initially, and there's a whole bunch of frame rates that aren't supported. For example, I think 4K ProRes has limited ones. I think the most frame rates are 4K H.264. That has 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, and other ones. But you think cinematic, 24 frames per second. Nope, 30 frames per second. That's all you have right now. So
Yeah, some curious choices there, but perhaps they're saving it up for the iPhone 14.
no, I think I hope they can do this in software updates. And the other curious thing was they announced ProRes support, Apple did, at the September iPhone event. And then Filmic Pro came out with it before Apple did.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be, it was an iOS update for the phone natively. Now they have it, 15 or 15.1, I forget which it is. So now you have that option, but Filmic Pro came out with ProRes before Apple did. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. So John says, does it still work on non-M1 Macs? What, just Intel Macs? It works on Intel, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's a universal build now, so you can the same installer from our website will work on both Intel and M1 Macs.
Yep, that's what I thought. Because Tim Cook said 2 years ago or a year ago, WWDC, Apple is going to be supporting Mac OS for Intels for years to come. So we have another year or two that Mac OS is going to be supported on Intels, and I presume that means Final Cut Pro as well. Because look, the vast majority of Final Cut Pro editors are on Intel. They didn't all just buy M1 Macs, the millions of people. I mean, the last time we got a number update from the Final Cut Pro team, 2.5 million in 2018, I think it was, or 2017, I forget which. So we're up to 3 to 4 million editors now. They didn't all jump to M1 Max overnight, and they're not going to. A lot of people are going to be on Intel for years. So therefore, Final Cut Pro is going to be used on Intel Macs for years. Now, I made the jump, but I still have my Mac Pro, which is obviously Intel. It's a beast of a machine.
Oh, that's the great thing about Macs. They just last forever. We have, and we see it as well. We have people editing videos on 2013 MacBook Pros, which are still going strong and all they need. So, yeah, I expect, the Intel Macs are going to be around for a long, long time yet to come.
So we got a question. Camera manufacturers have their own camera LUTs to transform footage from RAW to a variety of color space or other camera looks. Why do I need this?
That is an excellent question. Thank you for asking, Eric. Really appreciate that. And it's a really good question. When we first kind of announced CineMatch, especially for DaVinci Resolve, a lot of people said, well, can't you already do this in Resolve?
Right.
And the difference, CineMatch is actually doing something quite different under the hood. It's not just a LUT, and it's not just doing a color space transform. And that's the kind of thing to wrap your head around. The way CineMatch works is that, first of all, we profile the individual camera sensor. We're not just looking at the color science, the gamma and kind of gamut transform that's being applied. We're stripping those away first, and we're going all the way back down to exactly the way the sensor captures light. So when you're transforming from the Panasonic GH5 or from the iPhone to the GH5 or from Canon R5 to a Sony A7S III, those camera LUTs they're basically slapping the Sony color science on a Canon signal and treating that as a match. And sometimes that can be good enough if those log signals are kind of close enough to begin with, then you might get an okay kind of result. But what CineMatch does that's different is it takes that Canon signal and converts it to as though it was the Sony kind of color response, and then applies the Sony color science on top of that, which means it's getting a sensor, what we call as a sensor match. It's a sensor to sensor transform first, and then we're applying the target color science over the top. So you're getting a much more accurate, much kind of closer results between those two cameras than you would by just adding the LUT on its own.
And it seems to
Hope that
be
explains it.
it seems to be a lot simpler than trying to go in there and trying to do this manually, because it sounds like you've got this, matching the cameras from the start is where your starting point should be, if indeed you're shooting with multiple cameras and you want them to match. This seems to be a no-brainer, to use this first and then go from there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's there's a whole workflow guide on the site about how we intend to be worked. But yeah, their workflow would be you bring all of your clips into your timeline. You've got your kind of rough edit laid out. You're ready to begin grading. Your first step would be to kind of figure out what your target camera is going to be. So if maybe 80% of your clips are shot on the Panasonic and you've got kind of 20% of your clips are shot on the iPhone, you would want to match your iPhone to the your kind of A cam, just to kind of minimize the amount of matching you have to do. So drop CineMatch on those iPhone clips, tell the plugin what the source is. So if it's the iPhone 12 shot in Dolby Vision, and then you tell it what your target is. So it's the Panasonic GH5 and Vlog, and then do your match kind of exposure, white balance, and then you have essentially a timeline which is all in Vlog. And then from there, you can throw a LUT designed for Vlog on all those clips, and it'll be graded, or whatever kind of other creative grading choices you want. Maybe you want to add film convert as your kind of adjustment layer. But you can now, because you use CineMatch to match all those clips, it's now a single source, all kind of exposure, white balanced, and neutral, so that you can then apply any grading choice you apply to that will work kind of seamlessly across the entire timeline.
Right. So
what we find is that doing that matching manually on your own would take 10 or 15 minutes per kind of clip. You'd have to make kind of all of these minute adjustments and for each camera. So we know so the iPhone interprets red one way, but if you've got 3 cameras, then you're going to have to make kind of changes to each one of those kind of individually. And the amount of time taken for that grading would just multiply up enormously. CineMatch takes away it does a whole bunch of those steps that you would do manually in one kind of transform, so that you can basically takes care of the color correction. You can spend more time on the creative side of grading. Right.
And I bet that your plugins are popular in Hollywood, aren't they?
We have some, very high-end clients. It's used at HBO, the BBC there's all of the big kind of post houses in LA have at least one license that tends to get rolled out. And so we're very we like to kind of play spot the film convert. We can kind of recognize the grain when it's in use. So we'll be watching a show and say, "Is that film convert?" And then I'll kind of look up the kind of showrunner and the colorist and say, "Yep, they bought a license 6 months ago. That's probably us."
Wait a minute! You can look at a film and recognize your grain.
There's a characteristic to it, which is very after we've seen it over and over and over again, so we can kind of look at it and say, "Yeah, that looks like ours." Of course, there's people will combine it in various ways. I've seen colorists who will add 2 different layers of grain they'll add power window on just kind of one area, add a certain level of grain, and then grain outside of that just to kind of mix it up.
Right.
But But yeah, there's some really great. So yeah, the amazing thing about film it is used kind of all at those top tier of the industry. But then we have people who they're kind of coming straight out of film school or aspiring filmmakers making their first short film, and they're picking it up because they're students and they can use it for cheap, but they're getting the same kind of
Right.
production Hollywood level kind of quality on their projects.
Absolutely. So Eric Emmerich says, are supported cameras listed on your website? I'm sure they are, right?
Yep. If you go to, there's a camera list up in the top nav, and it'll show you all the manufacturers. We support over 70 cameras at the moment, from all the main ones: Sony, Canon, Panasonic, Blackmagic, Red, Arri, whole bunch of DJI drones. We've added the GoPro Hero 8, and we're just about to add the GoPro Hero 10, and of course the iPhone.
Right. And the GoPro is just, every year they come up with a new camera. I can't keep up with those GoPros. I buy them like every 2 or 3 years. I'll buy one, but it's like every year they have a new version and an improved version. I guess it's like the iPhone. I mean, people were talking about this new iPhone and they were saying, well, it doesn't have this cellular thing or that cellular thing. I don't buy an iPhone for the cell phone. I buy it for the camera, specifically for the video camera. If there's improvements in the video camera that are substantial, I will buy it every year. I don't use the phone that much. Texting a little bit, a little bit of stuff. I use it as a camera all the time. So,
yeah, that's what we see. That's the only way they can kind of differentiate themselves now. Every phone out there can make calls, it can run apps. They're kind of competing on basically battery life and camera improvements. So the only kind of real reasons to upgrade. But they're the camera improvements in the last couple iPhones are just phenomenal. They're getting better and better.
Yes, they are. So one of the trends that I really like that Apple has finally come around to, if you remember when the 2013 Mac Pro came out and Phil Schiller said, can't innovate my ass, right? I never liked that one. I didn't buy it. I didn't like it. It was not a Mac Pro to me. It was more like the Cube. Remember the Cube and when Steve Jobs was around? And I liked the Cube design, but it didn't have enough things that I could change around. So Apple came around. They had it was a semi-public meeting with top professionals asking what they wanted in a new Mac Pro. When they came out, I had Gary Adcock on here before the Mac Pro came out, the 2019 Mac Pro. And one of the questions I asked, I said, Gary, how many PCIe slots would you find necessary to be satisfied for the Mac Pro? He said, at 4. It's got to have 4. It's got 8.
Mm-hmm.
It came out with 8. So they reversed themselves on the Mac Pro. 2013 Mac Pro, they made it cylinder, they made it small, you can't upgrade it. Then they went giant size to this giant beast. This Mac Pro is bigger than my old Mac Pros. They did the exact same thing with the iPhone. Smaller, thinner. And then from 2000, the iPhone 12, it was bigger. It had protruding lenses. Apple has protruding lenses on an iPhone? Yes, that's what we want. We want beef. The professionals want beef. We don't want smaller and thinner. We want power. And then the 13 is the same way. Even the lenses are even more protruding than the 12 were. What did they do with the MacBook Pro? 2016, take away all your ports. No HDMI, no MagSafe, no card reader. We know what you want. This is Apple talking. We know what you want. We're going to give you 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports, and that's all you're going to get. And here in 2021, all that stuff came back. And the MacBook Pro is thicker by a large amount to the 2019 MacBook Pro. So they went to the point of the edge of the cliff of thinness and smallness, and then they reversed themselves because they realized they were making sacrifices that professionals didn't want. I am glad to see that trend in Apple. I want a beefier MacBook Pro. I want the power. Same with my iPhone, same with my Mac Pro. I don't want it compromised for design or for thinness or for lightness and stuff. So this new Mac Pro that I have, I really, really like this. Haven't pushed it yet.
Yeah, I think erring on the side of adding capabilities over kind of style has definitely been a welcome change in this thread. And I see that seems to be the general reception of all professional filmmakers out there. So thank you for
Yes.
giving us back our ports. Thank you for
Yes.
giving us the kind of
They
those
take them away,
capabilities.
took them away in 2016. What? And then they brought them back because it's not because Johnny Ive left, right? It's just because this is what professionals need. Same with the 2013 Mac Pro. It never impressed me. Some people liked it. So Garrett says, lots of my plugins still use Rosetta. We can test it because we have 2 M1 Macs in the house. So how is the performance of Rosetta?
It was surprisingly all right.
Okay.
I think for running under emulation, we were surprised that it worked as well as it did. Again, the running the both Film Convert Nitrate and CineMatch are both natively compatible with the M1 Mac, so that's definitely the way to go if you're on an M1. But the Rosetta emulation wasn't terrible for straight out of the box.
Rosetta 2, so it must be improved. So that's an emulation layer. I know what it does, but what is it technically called? Is it an emulation? Does it emulate something?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm not a programmer, so you can take my word for it. But yeah, basically, it was a way of running non M1 native apps on those chips as a kind of workaround.
I remember.
And, it was only a kind of a few months there where we needed to have it, but it didn't work too badly at the time. But now that we have a universal build, it'll run on Intel or on the M1s quite happily.
So my friend Garrett says, CineMatch is on my to-buy list. Very nice software. Thanks for making it available for Final Cut Pro. I think I must have got an email. I must have been on one of your earlier email lists, Film Converts, and they kept sending me the emails. And I think I messaged back one time, I need CineMatch for Final Cut Pro, and somebody emailed. It might have been you. I don't know. It says it's coming. I said, fantastic, because that's what I do have a Resolve Studio license that I got last year. And I got it when they had the special with the speed editor, right? At $299 for both, and both of them cost $299 themselves. The speed editor's still sitting down on my floor, never been opened. The package is sitting there because I like the keyboard and the mouse. That's the reason. And I'm not always working in Blackmagic. I've done some projects. I find that in order to use a software, especially in NLE, you can't dabble in it. You can't look at a tutorial and try this. I just throw a project at it and I stay in it until the project's done. Because you get the real world issues and techniques involved. That's what I do. So I've done a few in Resolve. I really like Resolve. Even though I'm a Final Cut Pro proponent, I really, really like Resolve. It would absolutely be the editor that I would use if Final Cut wasn't around or something happened to Final Cut.
Part of it's for me is just muscle memory. Like I started out on Premiere Pro back in the mid 90s, Premiere Pro 5.0 before the Creative Cloud, even the CS Creative Suite versions, and all of those, the keyboard shortcuts, just knowing where a sense of kind of where elements are, where panels are, is really handy. But I switched over to Final Cut in the early 2000s. I worked on a feature-length documentary in 2002, 2003 on an iMac G3 with a nest of FireWire drives.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Acquired on mini DV tape through kind of captured in real time off those with logging. So yeah, I've been editing for a long time, but yeah, there's still switching back and forth between platforms. It does take your brain kind of a little while to switch. So if you're comfortable in Final
Yeah.
Cut, then the great thing about Film Convert and CineMatch is it allows you to do your coloring within Final Cut. You don't necessarily need to have to bounce out to another application to do your color.
So one of the things I use Final Cut and Logic Pro, and also I do the same thing with Resolve. I customize my keyboard shortcuts, and I will make my Final Cut Pro keyboard shortcuts the same in Logic. For example, Logic natively does not have JK and L, doesn't have it, but I use JK and L all the time in Final Cut Pro, so I'm always used to it. So I went in the keyboard shortcuts in Logic, and I mapped J, K, and L in Logic, and I do all my apps, my major apps that way, the NLEs or the audio programs, so they share keyboard shortcuts. So that's one of the things that I do. I've been doing for a long time. The other thing is I take those keyboard shortcuts and upload them to iCloud, so I have a copy anywhere I go. Because sometimes you forget to take them with you on a flash drive, and you can just download them any machine you're on, and you're back in business. Of course, you always have the default keyboard short. People would tell me, "Oh, I don't want to do that because then when I go and teach, I forget." You just go back to the default keyboard shortcuts. Plus, there's no real teaching of Final Cut anymore. There's no official Apple drop support for the official Pro Apps teaching curriculum 2019, July 2019 or 2020. I forget when it was, because I'm a certified trainer. There's nothing, there wasn't nothing for 10.5, there's nothing for 10.6, only for 10.4, and they stopped officially supporting that, so there's no curriculum. I'll be curious if they come back around and start that back up again, because it seems kind of important. I mean, if you look at all the resources that Resolve has for on Blackmagic site, I mean, you have PDFs, you have video training courses for free, you have extensive training, and even though Final Cut looks simple on the surface, there's a lot that people don't know. There's a lot of people don't know. So I'd be surprised. I'd be pleasantly surprised if they brought it back. But I guess since they dropped it, I don't know what the reason for that was. Because they want to get an education, right?
Yeah, and it's a perfect kind of onboard platform from, again, you got your iPhone, you start off on iMovie, kind of making that move up to Final Cut Pro is a natural kind of progression. They would kind of encourage that kind of new stream of users coming in as much as possible.
So we have a question. Does CineMatch have use if I'm only using one type of camera? It has.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we absolutely because the primary controls are customized to your camera, even as if you've just got a single source on the timeline, you're going to find making exposure, white balance adjustments just a lot easier in CineMatch than doing it with the generic controls. There are built into CineMatch special false color views. So for middle gray exposure, for skin tone exposure, for white balance, temperature, and tint, there's a quick little toggle where you can just flip on an exposure view and make sure your middle gray is, if you have a color chart, then you can drag the slider until middle gray hits green, and then your shot is on exposure there. Same with skin tone. The other thing you can do is, because of the camera matching engine built into CineMatch, if you, say, want to match your GH5 footage to an ARRI Alexa in log C, you can drop CineMatch on there, change it to, and now you've got log C footage on your timeline. Okay. And then you can use any number of LUTs, like the ARRI 709 LUT. Is one of it's been used in many feature films just as the kind of LUT, because it gives such a kind of beautiful skin tone reproduction. And so you can use CineMatch to convert your footage to ARRI log C, drop the ARRI Rec 709 LUT on it, and then you've got a beautiful kind of graded looking film right there. So yeah, absolutely. It certainly can be used by single camera shooters for those reasons. And yeah, we encourage anybody, if any filmmaker, regardless of what type of projects you're on, we reckon should be using this because the color management capabilities that gives you is something you just haven't had access to before in Final Cut.
Right. So Garrett says, what about stock footage? Does it work with stock footage?
Yep, same. All you need to know is you need to know what what picture profile the footage was shot in. That's that kind of crucial for CineMatch because the profiles are built for each individual profile. So when you're looking for stock footage, obviously if it's raw, that's great. There's sites where you can raw film as one, which they have actual raw stock footage, which is great. You can compare that to something that we support. But otherwise, yeah, just when you're downloading your stock footage, just make sure you know what flavor of log it was shot in, and then that there's a corresponding profile in CineMatch for that.
I would presume that professional stock footage companies have that information in the metadata of the clip somewhere, maybe?
Not recent. There's a few of that we've chosen. A lot of them don't have. They've only just started adding actual
Okay.
log ungraded footage. A lot of the footage that you download is graded has a grade on it already.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, you want to keep an eye out for when you're looking at stock footage. Make sure you're looking specifically for log, and then yeah, make sure it's either in the metadata or they'll often put in the description of
Right.
the clip itself.
I just would have presumed that's what they did. So Garrett says, wow, the download DMG file is 1.1 gigabytes. There's a lot of stuff in there, right?
There's a lot of code here, yeah, that's doing. And again, this is what makes it different from a lot. There's a lot more. I'm not a programmer, so I can't kind of go into kind of how it does its thing. But there's a lot of math under the hood, which is going to make these transforms. And again, the transforms are two ways. So if you look at the camera list on our site, those 70 different cameras, and we're adding more every month. But the transforms are kind of it's a two-way equivalent. So you can go Canon to Sony or Sony to Canon. Any of those kind of pairings will work.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Creative Summit. Is this have you been to the Creative Summit before your company?
Not as a presenter, no. I've attended sessions in the past just as a kind of guest to check it out. But yeah, it's the first time as a sponsor and as a presenter.
So when was the last time you were there? Was it 2019 or 2018?
Would have been 2019. Was there an online version last year? I can't remember.
No, not last year. 2019 was the
last year, yeah.
Yeah, last in person.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I saw you there, right? I've been there 2016.
You're probably for those who are watching, Film Crew, it's actually based in New Zealand, so it's I'm actually broadcasting from Wellington, New Zealand here at the moment.
You are
Wednesday morning. Yeah,
I was going to ask you because I don't really pick up any accent. Why is that?
No, it's a long story. My background's American, and I've spent some time in New York and New Jersey, on and off for a few years. So you have an American accent, but yeah, it's a Kiwi company based here in Wellington, home of Lord of the Rings, and yeah. And so the problem is that we only get overseas kind of maybe once a year if we're lucky to NAB. And otherwise we rely on, so a lot of events going online this year has actually been really great for us because we actually get to participate. We can actually talk to people a lot more. So which is why we've chosen to be a part of the Global Summit this year.
Yeah, which is just exciting because the Global Summit, I've been there. I've been to the 2016, 2017, 4 years, 2016 to 2019 in person. And then last year I participated in the virtual one. And this year it's free. This is the first time the Creative Summit is free. And it's free not because it's really free. It's because companies are supporting it financially that makes it free to the end user. I'm sure Apple's doing some stuff. And then OWC is a big sponsor. Yourself, your own company's doing some stuff, aren't you?
We've got our own session called Color with Confidence, which is going to be presented by another of our team, Hennessy Griffiths, who's going to be talking all about, and she's going to be talking about approaching color from a non-colorist and from a beginner filmmaker perspective. So she's going to be talking about why color grading is important, kind of workflow and techniques, how you should kind of approach it, and then talking about how Film Convert and CineMatch can help you kind of achieve those effects that you're looking for in your films.
So yeah, let me just pull that up. I'm going to pull that up and look and see where Program 2021. Do you know where she is?
I believe we're on the Thursday afternoon, your
Okay, let's go
time.
to Thursday. There's so much stuff going on. And listen, everybody, it's free. Sign up free. There is a VIP tier package if you want to watch the recordings, but that's not everything you can do. You can watch, you can for free, including Apple Day, which is Thursday, that's the big one. I mean, hopefully it's a big one. So let me see. Let me pull it up here. Thursday. Let's see. One person. Here we go. There it is right there. Right?
Yep. Are we 2 p.m. or 1 p.m. Eastern?
It's 2 p.m. Eastern.
2 p.m.
So Hennessy Griffiths, Film Convert, Color with Confidence, The Art of Carefree Color Grading. Now, come on. It's not carefree. It's a lot of stress for us non-colorists. There really is. Not, and I'm just kidding, of course. I mean, listen, I can say, okay, you're a colorist. How much do you know about audio? Because I know a lot about audio, so we can spar on coloring versus audio. Both are important, of course, right?
Oh, absolutely. Sound, the old adage goes, sound is 50% of the movie, for creating
Yeah,
atmosphere, mood, kind of guiding your kind of attention, all those kind of things. What we've,
absolutely.
and it's a very technical kind of aspect of filmmaking. You need to know a lot about kind of how sound is reproduced in microphones within devices, kind of what you can do with it. The thing we find with color is that for so long it's been such a niche kind of role in the post industry and very kind of shrouded in mystery. Colorists are often their kind of dark rooms doing things, and even the director is sometimes excluded from those sessions, or they come in
Right,
at the last minute to kind of pick things over. But
right,
for a long time, color was kind of this rarefied thing that only a small number of people could do on very specialized equipment. A DaVinci Resolve suite cost $1 million when it was in early days, and then even when they brought down the cost, it was still $30,000 for a hardware tied kind of piece
right,
of
right. Oh,
equipment.
yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember when
And
Resolve was like
so,
tens of thousands of dollars, wasn't it? At some point.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And so, what's happened, which is fantastic in the past, even just 5 years, is that access to those tools has become so much more affordable and accessible. Access to education has become so much more affordable and accessible. But there's still this kind of apprehension thing. People aren't quite sure when you start talking about log gammas and gamuts and color space conversions and things. It's a lot of jargon. It's a lot of, I mean, there's a reason that the Resolve manual is 2,500 pages.
Right,
There's a
right,
huge amount of technical information to
right.
wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And so, what we've designed, what we want to do with Film Convert and CineMatch is kind of take away some of that apprehension. Say, okay, you don't need to be a PhD in color science in order to color grade a really good looking video. Have something that you can be proud of, and we'll design these tools to be as easy and as accessible to use as possible, so that anybody can kind of pick them up and within a couple of minutes be color grading a film and have something that's within its broadcast kind of quality.
Yeah, I need all the help I can get with color. I just don't, I spend all my time with Final Cut and Logic that, and then now Black Magic, now Resolve. So that's all, I don't have time to learn anything else. That's crowding my brain enough. So Eric says, how does a demo work? Limitations, time limit, etc. How does that work? What's the restrictions on it?
There's a free there's a free trial download, which you can get from our website. There's no time restrictions. It'll work forever. All the camera profiles are enabled. All of the tools are enabled, so you can do all of the camera matching. You can use the false color views, everything. The only thing that it'll do is put a little watermark on your footage, which you can remove when you purchase a license. But otherwise, yeah, it's fully functional. You'll see everything. So basically, you can go ahead and match up an entire project with it, and then just activate it, remove the watermark, and be ready to go.
So if you use it with the watermark, you don't have to redo the footage if you buy a license. You just buy the license and it removes the watermark from existing projects.
Yep, that's right. And you just need to re-render or clear your render cache to get
Right,
to
right,
make sure
right.
that watermark's all scrubbed off. But yeah, that's the way it works.
So Garrett says, talking about the Creative Summit, most of the sessions are timed during our nighttime. I need to be able to rewatch them afterwards. Otherwise, I will be a broken man at the end of the week. No sleep. They are repeating some of the sessions late at night for us, so I presume that's for overseas. So some of the sessions they are repeating, and I think that's for the overseas audience. However, the Apple session is not being recorded. If you want to see the Final Cut Pro team and the Pro Apps team and interact with them, you have to be there live for that Thursday. That's not being recorded, so that's not part of the VIP package, and you cannot rewatch it another time. So that's whenever we went to the Creative Summit, the 4 years that I've been to it, one of the highlights is interacting with the Final Cut Pro team, Pro Apps team. You go up to this point, to up to 2019, we went to One Infinite Loop. We didn't go to the Spaceship Campus, and we went to One Infinite Loop where their headquarters, and we went to the theater and had presentations. And then on Saturdays, they came to see us for a private Q&A at the Juniper Hotel. No phones, no pictures, no audio recording, no video recording of that session. And it's the information for the most part is supposed to stay inside, but there's a couple of generic things like we read all your emails. That's okay. That's fine. But that's the highlight. So I'm hoping that this version of the Apple presentation for the Global Summit is going to be, I hope it's going to have more than just what we've already seen on YouTube, what we've already seen at the presentation. I hope they're just not going to redo that. I hope there's something additional. There's been problems with Final Cut Pro 10.6, so I know a bug fix is coming. If you're going to do a bug fix, throw a couple more features in there, slap a couple more on there. That's my recommendations to everybody. So John says, downloading the demo now.
I was going to ask whether you tried out the tracker feature in Final Cut Pro with the magic tracking.
I haven't tried it out that much yet. What I've done in the past is I buy plugins that have the Mocha tracker built in. So like titles and stuff that track a subject, I've used those. I haven't tried this one. This one looks very, very sophisticated. It's much more than it appears on the surface. It is in itself is a big, big feature. Something else, since you brought that up. When I first got my iPhone, I shot some cinematic footage. Before 10.6 came out, you had to use iMovie on the iPhone to adjust the cinematic look. You had like a slider that blurred the background, made it more in focus. It's much more sophisticated in Final Cut Pro 10.6 than that. There's 3 or 4 different adjustments you can make. So it's much more sophisticated than what it just appears when it first came out. Now, from what I understand, John says the tracker works well in Final Cut Pro 10. Everybody that likes that, and I think it's a great feature, but it's not a 3D tracker, right? I think it's a planar tracker, which is like 2D. So Motion VFX or one of those companies have a more sophisticated tracking system, but it's also the same cost that Final Cut Pro costs, $300 or something, $199 or $300. So, but it's a big feature. It's a giant feature. I could see how much work went into that. So I will be using that going forward as I learn more about it. And the cinematic mode. Initially I thought, well, this is nice. This is like a little consumer kind of a thing. And no, it's more sophisticated than that. Now, you can only do it in 1080p and 30 frames per second right now. I had somebody earlier today was putting a 30p clip in a 24p timeline, and I said, it's 30p, It's not 24p. You would think cinematic would be 24p, but it's not. 30p seems to be the default frame rate of the iPhone. That's everybody support, all the different things support that. But hopefully 24p is coming to cinematic mode. That would help it a bit. But anyway, it's much more sophisticated than what it first appears. Once you get Final Cut Pro 10.6 and Monterey, that's one of the fragmentations of this new version of Final Cut. It's got to be Monterey. It's got to be Final Cut Pro 10.6. So Eric says the FCP tracker seems to be less potent than the Premiere Pro built-in tracker, according to Larry Jordan test. I don't have any comment on it. I don't use it Premiere. Have you used it in Premiere, John? The tracker?
No, I haven't. No, so I can't say a comparison. It just looks very kind of slick from the demos that I've seen.
Yeah, it looks really slick, and I'm sure it's on Intel too, so it's not just M1, but I'm sure it's using Metal and machine learning or whatever the term is. Is it machine learning? I don't remember. I'm sure it's using all that. But it looks pretty sophisticated because before, like I said, the plugins are expensive when you buy them that have that tracking feature. So are you going to be attending the virtual Creative Summit yourself besides the presentation that you guys are doing?
Yep, I'll be there. I've got a bunch of sessions bookmarked. I'll be in the our own Color with Confidence session in the comments there. So if you have any comments, feel free to say hi or ask any questions during the session, and we'll be responding to those. And yeah, I'll be if there'll be breakout rooms, I'm sure. So just keep an eye out. If you want to say hi or have any questions about Film Converter or CineMatch, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah. So when the Creative Summit was in person, they aimed for about 150 people besides the crew. Last year when it went virtual only, and I think it was 199 for a while, it was 149. They did 2 or 3 times the amount. From what I understand this year, because it's free, they once again done 2 or 3 times. So we're probably up to thousands of people now that are going to be at the Creative Summit. They've also, I had my Final Cut Pro radio podcast just came out with Sam Messman and Jeffrey Orthwine. And they said one of the things they wanted to do was expand a little bit to allow people not just Final Cut Pro, but more generic production and editing and things. They're not going to expand to Premiere. They're not going to expand to Avid, but just more generic. They want to attract even more people. Like if you're a Premiere editor and wanted to learn Final Cut Pro. So you know how to edit, you know what a J cut and an L cut are, but you don't know how it's done in Final Cut. They have sessions for stuff like that. And then of course motion as well. And Eric says, thanks, John. I think I'll give CineMatch a try. And don't forget to tune in to the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit and watch the session. That is right here. Here's the description of it. Let me see. Color grading is one of the most important. So in this session, you'll learn about why is color grading important? Well, it's very important. The fundamentals of color correction. That's for me. I need the fundamentals. And how you can achieve the best results with your grading. So those are all good things, especially for somebody who's not, I've dabbled in it and I can match shots up and stuff. But as far as getting deep into it, I never did. So are you a colorist yourself, John?
No, I was a strict editor when I started out. Doing kind of documentary, kind of short films, those type of things. But I learned a lot on the job at Film Convert about the whole realm of color that I had no idea about before I started. It's a fascinating kind of thing to learn about from the kind of biology of the human eye and how the brain processes color, right through to how we emulate that kind of process in circuits and in code. And yeah, it's been a really exciting kind of journey. Film Convert's really, one of the things I think I'm kind of most proud of and what we've been doing is that we're bringing something quite new and unique that hasn't been available to kind of editors and colorists before. This idea of camera informed controls or coloring tools that know about how your camera understands color is
Right.
quite a different approach to it. There's no other color tools on the market which kind of work in the same way. And because especially if you're used to shooting, you'll know you have an intuitive sense of how your camera kind of works and how it
Right.
kind of, when you adjust the exposure or things, it's going to behave in this way. Imagine having that control over your footage in post, in the same, having that same understanding of how your camera is processing color, in being able to adjust that in post. We call it, it's not raw, but it's raw like is what we're kind of calling it.
Huh. So do you shoot yourself too? Do you shoot with a camera?
Yeah. I've got Google Pixel 3 is my kind of camera choice, but we've got
Okay.
a whole range of cameras in the office. We have to purchase or kind of rent them in order for the profiling process. So we've got the A7S III, both the Pocket 6K and Pocket 4K from Blackmagic, a whole range of other. We've got the DJI drones, the Mavic 2, the most recent Mavic drone in at the moment. Plus, so yeah, we've got tons of toys to play. We went out and did a shoot not last week, but the week before for CineMatch. We took 4 different cameras to a venue, hired a dancer to choreograph a piece and perform, and we shot the 4 cameras simultaneously, so that we could then kind of show off, okay, here's how the Canon looks, here's how the Sony looks, here's how
Sure.
the Blackmagic looks, here's how the other one. And again, out of the box, even though they're all shooting in log, so it's kind of low contrast, kind of flat, but you can see clear differences between those. And once you've added a layer of CineMatch to those, you're getting an identical look from all 4 of those signals, as though it had been shot on the one camera. It's a pretty incredible
Right.
demo.
Yeah, it's just a real time saver. I mean, when you're getting started with, if you have to use different cameras and you want to try to match them. I mean, in audio, it's something we do things. We have audio matching with EQ and compression and stuff. It's the same kind of thing for video. You're trying to get it to so you're in the same ballpark to start with, and you can go from there. Because obviously, in audio, you have microphones. You have mixing boards, you have channel strips, you have compressors, you have the room acoustics, all these variables. And if you're trying to match like 2 different voiceovers that were done at 2 different locations with different mics, they have the match thing. Is it in Final Cut or in Logic? I forget. Maybe it's in both, where they try to do a job of matching them. So it's a very similar kind of thing for audio that they have in audio. Have we covered everything, John? Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think so. If there's we did. We've had put out the new version of Film Convert. I'm not sure if we mentioned that, but Film Convert Nitrate is native for the M1 Max as well. So
Okay.
if you're a Film Convert user, or if you haven't tried it out, now is a great time to jump in, especially if you've just received one of the new M1 Max.
Do you guys have one of the new M1 Max in your office?
Not the we have the earlier M1 version. We've got a
Okay.
M1 Pro on order at the moment, but we're waiting for that to be delivered.
Yeah. When they first went online, I went online and ordered Space Gray 16-inch M1 Max, 64 gigabytes of unified memory, 32 CPU graphic core. I mean, everything. But I didn't get the 8 terabyte drive. I got the 4 terabyte drive. That thing's like $1,600 or some kind of, No, I initially ordered the 2 terabyte drive. That's what I have in my Mac Pro, and it's been fine. And then what happened was, the day they went on sale in the Apple stores, I said, let me check. Just curious if they have the model that I want. They had it in stock. So they had it in stock the morning they went on sale in the Apple store. So I bought it from them with I'm in Maryland, so it was Columbia Mall. I went on there, ordered everything that I got, but I switched from the 2 terabyte to the 4 terabyte. And they had it in stock. I was shocked that they had it in the store. So I ordered it, got it when it first came out, and I canceled my other order because that was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks away. So I got it on day one. I was so glad. I was really shocked that they had it in stock. This was not a stock model. This was, everything was bumped up. So, but so
when
far,
you're shooting 4K footage, you're going to go through it.
Yeah, so far this thing is phenomenal. So far, I am very, very pleased. This is my MacBook. This is a Stream Deck, which is what I'm switching scenes with. This is my audio interface. And here's the thing. This is my Mac Pro keyboard. I'm still using a keyboard and a mouse, even though I have the Mac Pro. I'm just faster with the keyboard and the mouse. So I used keyboard and the mouse. And then when I go to the Creative Summit, or I go in person, or I go to NAB, I'll take the MacBook and I'll have that, for live streaming in from the hotel rooms and stuff, and for editing, putting stuff together. But so far, this, I'm not stress testing it, but everything that I do, this thing is, I'm very, very pleased with it. It was not cheap, but I'm very pleased with it.
Oh, it'll last you for a good few years at least.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no reason for me to upgrade unless there's a dramatic increase in the next version, because this is completely fine. The phones are different. The phones I upgrade every year if there's new video capabilities, but I don't need a new Mac. Like if a new iMac came out or a new Mac Mini came out with the M1X processor, that's fine. This is what I need. The MacBook Pro, because I can take it with me in hotel rooms and stuff. So he got it. There's Nick.
Nick's my colleague from Convert. He's jumped in chat.
There you go. And so where do people find you, or film? It's Film Convert on Twitter, right?
Yep, that's right. Film Convert on Twitter, filmconvert.com and cinematch.com are the websites to find out more about software, download the trials.
Very good. Is there anything else we want to cover? I'm so glad you guys you're going to be at the Creative Summit this year. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited too. Really, again, we want to support the community. Want to obviously put our names out there, but also just kind of meet more people, find out more about kind of projects you're working on, and hear about kind of what your kind of dreams, aspirations for Final Cut Pro and color and all those things are. So, if you see us in the chat rooms, or definitely catch our session. But feel free to reach out to us anytime. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, they have those virtual rooms that people can talk to each other. A lot of times before sessions and stuff, they'll have like a coffee break or a coffee, sit down, and you get to talk to everybody who's in there and chat, and then they break out in different rooms and stuff. That's how the virtual ones have worked. But I really can't wait till it goes back to in person. I mean, the Final Cut Creative Summit was my absolute favorite event of every year because of Final Cut Pro. NAB is always very cool, but it's not Final Cut Pro centric. And the reason I go to NAB is for Final Cut Pro stuff, because everything else I can watch online. I can watch the Blackmagic presentation online. But to go there, and when there's Final Cut Pro, a lot of times the Apple team will make an announcement. They announce ProRes RAW at NAB. They've had other updates for Final Cut Pro around like a day before, or right around NAB. So those are the things that excite me when there's Final Cut Pro stuff happening at NAB. That's when I'm most excited. People, I've seen this said so many times that Apple hasn't, presented at NAB since 2011, 2012. Nonsense. The Final Cut Pro team presented at NAB in the Convention Center Hall in 2017 and 2018. The team was there, open to the public. It was free. They had their own demonstration in the Convention Center Hall. They don't have a booth. Yeah, that's what they're talking about, not a booth. Because Blackmagic has that now. They have the Apple booth, from what I understand. So, yeah, looking forward to getting back in person as well. But obviously, it's got to be done safely. So, all right, John, I sure appreciate you stopping by and talking to our Final Cut Pro community. And everybody's excited about the Creative Summit next week. And at Film Convert on Twitter, is it filmconvert.com and cinematch.com?
Yeah, those are the ones.
There you go. Thanks a lot, John.
Lovely. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for your questions. And yeah, look forward to seeing you at the summit.